Channel open. Welcome back to Weekly Trek, a Star Trek news podcast presented by TrekCore.com. I am your host, Alex Perry.
What's today's date? The date.
Today's show was recorded on January 24th, 2026, and is current through the Star Trek Starfleet Academy Season 1 episode Vitus Reflux, so beware of spoilers. All right, let's get into the show.
Good day, Voyager, and welcome to A Briefing with Neelix. It's a catchy title, isn't it?
Weekly Trek is a regular news show covering the biggest stories from the Star Trek franchise. We are in the Alex Kurtzman era of Star Trek with the 12th television show currently in production and 14 movies to enjoy, and merchandise continuing to fill the Bajoran wormhole. So stick with me and I'll help you sort the real facts from lots of the Dominion propaganda that you'll find online. But I can't do this alone, and my guest this week is returning guest Lee Hutchison. Lee, welcome back to Weekly Trek.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
All right, Lee, well, you know the drill. I want to know something's got you excited about Star Trek at the moment. What's got you moving at Warp 10?
Yeah, for me, it's hard not to kind of highlight Starfleet Academy.
Sure.
I'm sure, like, probably most fans, I think there was an element of kind of, is this the Star Trek series that we won? Is this going to be any good? You know, because it's been a long gestation period for the series. And, you know, over the past year or so, you know, you get Holly Hunter, you get an Oscar nominee like Paul Giamatti kind of come onto the show. And you're like, okay, I'm pretty interested in this. And, you know, it was really up until I started to watch it that I've really, really enjoyed the show and just kind of immersing myself in that world. It was never the show I was particularly keen on or wanted, but I was really surprised that, you know, I was like you, I got the chance to see, you know, the first 6 episodes certainly nice and early, and you can kind of watch it all in a run. You kind of see where the things are working, maybe where things kind of develop and improve upon. And I remember just having such a great weekend watching those 6 episodes, and I could see in that moment, and I've actually been just really happy the past couple of weeks to see people maybe holding their hands up or admitting they maybe got it wrong or prejudged early, where a lot of people kind of went in thinking, oh, this is going to be terrible, it's going to be rubbish, it's going to be the rubbish we've seen where it's like, it's Star Trek 90210, all that kind of rubbish, where people have kind of held their hands up and gone, this is good, this is really great, we're enjoying it, the production design's great young cast, hey, there's some kind of criticisms that can be fair that people can have, but I think a lot of people have come round to it, and I think it's always a lesson to kind of, you know, it's sometimes nice to be surprised, and we can have our expectations busted. Hey, when I watched those episodes, I thought, I think people are going to be really surprised and really enjoy this. I think there's going to be a lot of praise for it. But equally, I could see that, hey, there's still going to be an audience out there that aren't going to be convinced and are going to throw every hateful or cliche comment under the sun at this series and won't be convinced otherwise. But I've been really happy to see the journey people have been going on. It's always nice when you get a little bit ahead of it and you can kind of watch it in real time. People go through the experience that we did, and I'm really pleased for this young cast. You know, I think it was a few weeks ago, every post that, you know, Paramount, CBS, Star Trek posted online, some of the comments were just derogatory, hateful, really sad to see. And I felt really bad for such a young cast that are exposed to this for the first time. You know, it's certainly not new, but it's never pleasant to see that kind of thing go on. But I've been really happy to see, again, even that stuff in the past next few weeks where, for better or worse, I click on those comments and I see, hey, still some of those cliche negative ones, but actually a lot of praise going to this young cast. And I'm just really excited to see fans, but equally this cast and crew go on an adventure, because I think we're very lucky with the show we've got, and I'm just buzzing to see more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm generally a sucker for new Star Trek, right? Like, as somebody who enjoys pretty much everything he watches, it's oftentimes tough for me when I watch some of this stuff. I'm like, I wonder how other people are going to feel about this, right? Like, I like it, but oftentimes I like things that lots of other people don't really like. So am I watching this going, I think this is great, and the sort of general audience reaction will track with mine? Or am I going to find that actually I'm in the minority and this isn't something that a lot of people are vibing with? And, you know, I am really pleased, just as you were saying, to see that with Starfleet Academy taking place, where it's like, no, genuinely, like, I think for those people who are giving the show a chance, that many of them, not all of them, and this is not like a, hey, it's new Star Trek, so you have to like it type thing, but many people who are giving it a chance of finding that, you know, I have read a lot of comments of people saying, just as you were saying, right, like, I didn't think I was going to like this show. I didn't think it was going to be for me, and now I've watched it, and I actually, maybe I don't love it, but I definitely like it a lot more than I thought I would, and I'm really interested in seeing where it's going, and that's really heartening to see. I mean, yeah, there's also plenty of weirdo stuff, and I got a particular weirdo thing for my opinion at the end of the show this week that is, like, stupid. But generally, you know, the reaction's been very positive, and yeah, as you say, right, that is very cool.
And I've loved as well, I always think these things are good stress tests, is where, in this era of kind of, the Alice Kurtzman era, there's been very few times, I'd say, that, you get that kind of almost consensus. I'm sure you're the same as me, you know loads of different Star Trek fans or in different group chats or forums, and that, it can feel like a civil war is going on some of the time, and it's just exhausting. It feels like a good throwback to 90s Star Trek forums. We've all been through it before, but I've been really surprised, even just like consensus in some of these groups where people are like, yeah, really enjoying this one. Oh wow, I've been so surprised. And you're like, God, we can finally agree on something. There's not going to be the mental exhaustion of debating and arguing with my friends over the quality of a Star Trek show, or, oh God, not this season again, or I'm bored of this, I'm never watching this. Like, it's just nice to go, God, we can just enjoy Star Trek and just have a good time talking about, what worked this week, maybe what didn't work, the characters, where it's all going. It's nice to just have a little bit of peace and quiet.
Yeah, that has been really nice. It is that sense that you can just sort of enjoy something, right? Like, and talk about it and not necessarily have it be a big effing deal. So yeah, I think you're totally spot on that. All right, let me tell you what I'm feeling good about Star Trek this week. And just a couple of days ago arrived on my doorstep the XO6 version of one scale action figure for Star Trek Picard Captain Worf. So this is Worf from season 3 of Star Trek Picard. And in my opinion, this is one of the best 1/6 scale action figures that XO6 has done yet to date. It looks like Michael Dorn walked off the set of Star Trek Picard season 3 and then went through that anomaly that shrunk the runabout. I mean, it's a really nice action figure. The sculpt for Michael Dorn looks amazing. It's got the big weapon that he has in that season. The tailoring for that sort of elaborate sort of Klingon costume that he's wearing in the season is great. And it's another home run for the company. I mean, not all of them are total home runs. I've got a Wesley Crusher that's not so great, but when XO6 gets it right, boy, do they really, really get it right. And their Star Trek Picard Worf action figure is probably one of the top 3 or top 5 action figures that they have put out. And if you missed out and weren't able to pre-order it, it is now available for immediate purchase. There are only a couple left, so by the time you hear this, it might even be sold out. But if anybody hears this and is at all tempted and feels like they missed out, there is a small window of opportunity to add one to your collection.
They look really great. Like, I've got shelves where I think, God, they would look fantastic on. But yeah, the price point's too high for me. But the joy of kind of the recent wave that's upcoming, I'm more kind of focused on that, my $30 Weeun action figure coming soon. That's more to my thing, but I look at that and think, damn, that would look good on my shelves. I would really enjoy dusting that every few months.
All right, well, with that, let's turn to the week's top stories.
There's a war going on, and I'm a reporter.
Well, Star Trek Section 31 is picking up awards nominations this season, but perhaps not in the way that Paramount might have hoped. Nominations were announced this week for this year's Golden Raspberry Awards, otherwise known as the Razzies, which are awarded each year to Hollywood's least successful movies from the prior year. Think of it as a mirror universe version of the Oscars. And Section 31 makes a strong showing with 5 nominations, including for Worst Picture alongside The Electric State, Hurry Up Tomorrow, Disney's Snow White, and War of the Worlds. In addition to Worst Picture, Michelle Yeoh is nominated for Worst Actress, Casey Roll is nominated for Worst Supporting Actress, Olatunde Osunsanmi as Worst Director, and Section 31's writing team for Worst Screenplay. The winners, if you can call it that, will be announced the day before the Oscars, that being Saturday, March 14th. TrekMovie.com reports this is Star Trek's first Razzie Award nomination since Star Trek V: The Final Frontier. But it's not entirely bad news for Section 31. The movie has been nominated for for a makeup award from the Makeup Artists and Hairstylists Guild. That's an actual award, not a award for not being very good. Olatunde Osunsanmi was nominated for an NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Directing in a Television, Movie, Documentary, or Special. And Section 31 was nominated for a Sound Editing Award at the 73rd Golden Reel Awards for Outstanding Achievements in Sound Editing for a Non-Theatrical Feature. So, some actual award nominations to balance out the Razzies. Lee, what do you think about Section 31's Razzie Award nominations?
Yeah, I'm outside of Star Trek. I'm a huge movie guy, and go there mostly every other night. But for me, this time of year is always interesting. There's what are the films I've maybe missed this year that have been nominated that I need to catch up on. And without fail, every year, one of the things I just loathe is the Razzie Awards. I just think they're just really tacky. I think they often go for very low-hanging fruit, easy shows and, easy movies to kind of get a bit of publicity off the back of. I think the only time they've ever had any real relevance for me was, I think, when Halle Berry, fresh off winning an Oscar the previous year, turned up to collect her Razzie Award for Catwoman. Great iconic moment. You can find out on YouTube. I just think the Razzie Awards are just, there's very little kind of critical thought about, what is a terrible film or performance? And I just give them very little credibility. I think they were edgelords before edgelords, and I'm sure the only people that are out there excited that Star Trek Section 31's been nominated for this are the people that kind of grift on negative Star Trek publicity. It's one of those ones, I know you did it recently with your end of year review. I've certainly talked about it verbatim, but it's Star Trek Section 31 is terrible. There's no escaping that. It is just, an absolute mess. I'm only surprised the guy that did the Irish accent wasn't nominated, because that was a award nomination worthy performance for a stinker.
And we should say you were in a position to comment because your wife is Irish.
Exactly, yeah. I've only watched it once, and I watched it with her, and we were both aghast. But I just think these things are just, I pay them no attention. And, I've seen things that I've enjoyed in the past get nominated for them. As I say, they are just not worth any. There's no credibility to them. They're a bit too try hard for me. But there's no escaping it. It wasn't great. But there's a lot more worse things out there. And as someone that, watches hundreds of movies a year, there was a lot worse than Star Trek Section 31 last year. But I can't say it didn't deserve it. I just don't believe in the institution that is the Razzie Awards.
Yeah, it's just so mean-spirited. I mean, Section 31 is terrible, right? As you say, it's a terrible film, and so we'll take that as read. But a lot of people worked very hard on it. And it's one thing to sort of have a critical reaction to something and talk through the things you didn't like about it. I mean, that's art. And by making art, you are opening yourself up to people not liking it and responding and talking about the things they don't like about it. And for every bad thing that you make, there's something that somebody really likes, and things that some people really dislike are things that other people really like, and vice versa. I mean, Section 31 is a bad movie. It was a misfire on a whole host of different levels. But this idea of doing a worst of Hollywood is just, you're right. It's like edgelord mean-spiritedness in an era now where that's a dime a dozen everywhere. And I don't even agree with some of these nominations. I mean, I actually thought, for me, Casey Rolls' Rachel Garrett was the highlight of the movie. I actually really enjoyed that performance that she did. I enjoyed sort of seeing that version of the character. And that was if you told me to pick out the things that I really like about Section 31, that's high on the list. And so it just feels like such a weird exercise to take a movie that has already gotten a good kicking online and then sort of elevate that kicking up to the next level by having these. It's like everybody who made the movie knows it's a bad. Nobody's under the assumption and the understanding that it's not a bad movie. I went to the Farpoint convention last year. I'll be there next weekend. They got Jess Bush coming up this year, but last year they had, of course now I'm blanking on his name, the guy who plays Zeph in Section 31.
Oh yeah.
And this was a week, 10 days after the movie had come out. And you know, I had the opportunity to talk to him one-on-one, and he knew that nobody liked it, you know, like, and I sat in and watched him, his panel, and same thing, right? Like, he was very honest about knowing what the reaction to the movie was, but also he was a huge Star Trek fan, so he had an absolutely great time making it because he got to make Star Trek. So, like, you know, it was really interesting to see him sort of processing the critical reaction to it and understanding that people didn't like it, but also like, but his personal time making the movie was a really good one. And it's like, that feels like the kind of thing that you know, we should be elevating and honoring. It's like everybody tried their best. It spectacularly didn't work, but everybody tried their best. I mean, nobody ever wants to make a bad movie. And so even though it's a terrible movie, the Razzies is just not it for me.
No, it's something that should have been left behind in the 90s. It's always just scrambling for relevance. And yeah, I have no problem like ranking, you know, I didn't enjoy this film this year, that one was terrible, but the joy is, and maybe it speaks to how much content or films, TVs out there is, I move on with it and, you know, deal with it. You know, it's all right to have a wee pop at Section 31 every few months and a wee laugh, but my life doesn't revolve around constantly kicking something and having to hold something up to kind of do so. It's just, yeah, it's just boring. And yeah, as I say, the sooner the Razzies cease to exist, the better. But yeah, we move on, and I'm sure this is the final bookend for Section 31.
1 year after its release, pretty much. I think it was like, today's January 24th. I think it was maybe like January 25th or something like that it came out last year. So, well, continuing our discussion of press coverage of the launch of Star Trek Starfleet Academy, TrekCore had the opportunity to speak with the Doctor actor Robert Picardo at the press day and red carpet premiere of the show about returning to Star Trek. On being one of the older cast members in a show filled with so many young actors, Picardo said, quote, "Keeping up with them, pace-wise, mentally, the 14-hour shooting days is a challenge, but they're so delightful to be around. They're committed to their roles, very serious about their work. You want to work with actors who take the work seriously, but not themselves too seriously. They seem to have really good senses of themselves, of what a long career will be, and their heads are screwed on right. That's very refreshing to me to see in all of these wonderful young performers." And Picardo also talked about an area of commonality between his character and Holly Hunter's Nahla Ake. Our captain, played by Holly Hunter, is half Lanthanite, so she's 420 years old. The Doctor is 800 plus, so they have something to commiserate about, the burden of infinity. The Doctor is pushed into a place he's not really comfortable in. He's pushed, and when we see him react in a way that's uncharacteristic, I think he comes out of it as a much deeper character, but he's pushed to a place where he has a really deep realization, and that's what made the arc of the first season so much fun. And he went on to say, I mean, 800 years is an awesome thing to try and wrap your mind around, right? I mean, at my age of 72, childhood memories are sort of wrapped in a haze, but the idea of having 800 years of perfectly clear digital memory is something that's hard to imagine as a human. But when it comes to the Doctor, I made a conscious effort. I didn't want him to be old and slow, so I speak with the same pace that I used to on Voyager. I would say he's the same but deeper. He's still snarky. He often feels he's the smartest person in the room, and he still sometimes embarrasses himself when he's overexcited or too full of himself. Lee, have you been enjoying Robert Picardo's return as the Doctor on Star Trek Starfleet Academy?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I've loved it. And it was just such a surprising announcement. God, yeah. Couple of years ago now, 18 months ago? And it was when you hear it, you go, oh, that makes sense. And it already gave you that excuse thinking, I think I'm really going to enjoy this kind of era that they base it in, because it's such a great concept to have him still around in 800 years. It's, full props to the writer that did that. But I was thinking and, reflecting on Picardo and like just what an amazing journey he's been on. I can't remember who he said it with in an interview, but he goes, I never expected to be making Star Trek money ever again. And I was thinking back when it was an interview, I think it was maybe the Delta Flyers or something, where Picardo was on and he was like at the beginning of that series, and you can see it. He goes, I was the last person on the call sheet. And you think of his journey not just as like a character but like as an actor. I was chuckling to myself the other day remembering when there was the big kind of discussion about when he said, oh yeah, I've been approached to star in Star Trek Picard, and everyone was just like waiting for that moment to come along. And then he ended up being in Star Trek Prodigy, now Starfleet Academy. And you could easily be thinking, God, I'm a bit fed up of this character, but I've loved all the different kind of parts of this character that we've got to see over these two shows. And I think there's so much promise and potential with where the EMH could go in this season of Starfleet Academy. Like, there's so much that we don't know about that past 800 years. And when you think about it, it's quite sad and sorrowful to think about how many lives he's kind of been alongside and how many friends, family, loved ones that he's lost in that time. And I'm really looking forward to what might be if you were imagining a writer room whiteboard of like episodes 10 or 9, the Doctor episodes. So I'm really looking forward to that. But I've just loved his contribution to the show. There's just the small touches in each episode, and I'm loving those quote unquote the adult conversations that happen where you've maybe got the kind of senior team involved and their discussions. I just think he's been a wonderful addition. And I go back to that point I made earlier where you see some of these terrible comments online, and one that made me chuckle, I clicked on one where it was like the scene from, I think it's episode 2, where he's doing the opera work, and someone was like, God, this new Star Trek's terrible. What is the Doctor doing singing? And it's like, what a great way to look through the comments and go, you're clearly a fake fan. You're clearly a fake fan. The amount of just, you look at that and go, interesting. But no, I'm really pleased for him. And I was even thinking, I'd love to, if I had a chat with him. And I've lucky, funnily enough, he's come to Edinburgh Fringe a couple of times in previous years, and I've had a chance to sit down and talk with him. Great guy. But if I met him just now, one of the questions I'd love to know is like, what must it be like to have gone from Voyager, at the time, amazing, TV production, but still kind of, MDF, classic kind of people pulling at the doors. Like, what has it been like to go from that era of Star Trek on a bit more lower budget, week to week, all that kind of stuff, to this modern version where, God, I can only imagine what it must be like to walk onto that set in Toronto. Like, that must be just a surreal way to watch TV. And yeah, I'm very curious to see if he'll turn up again in Toronto when a new Stargate series begins as well. He must be feeling like he's got lots of exciting opportunities. So yeah, I'm just really, really happy with that. I think great idea. And yeah, it's one that hasn't been done for nostalgia purposes. It makes sense, and that's the best type.
Yeah, I have mentioned before, I've seen the first 6 episodes, so what I'm about to say is not based off of what happens in episodes 4, 5, and 6. I'm not doing one of those, like, I'm going to tell you what I think might happen, but it's actually because I know it's going to happen because I've seen it in a future episode. I'm just generally saying, like, I think this is going to happen. Like, it does feel as though a Doctor episode is coming because we have seen in the first 3 episodes of the season, well, he wasn't in the 3rd episode, but in the first 2 episodes of the season in which the Doctor has appeared, there is the sort of laying track for a bit of a story arc for the character. That sort of piece around him immediately putting distance with Sam, who was very interested in getting to know him, and, the sort of references to the Prodigy characters and the Voyager crew, and him having that sort of unexpected reaction to hearing their names, and just listening to Bob Picardo's comments about, what did he say, that connection point with Nahla Ake, commiserating about the burden of infinity. That definitely sort of implies that the Doctor needs to learn to have close relationships with people again, because he's sort of stopped doing that because he's had them in the past and he's outlived everybody, and he doesn't really want to do that again. And I think whatever circumstances that episode or that subplot of an episode like comes to a head, I'm really interested to see how it plays out, and really interested to see Picardo get, like, ideally some really kind of chunky dramatic stuff to do, because as you say, right, like, he's been a bit of a fixture now of the Kurtzman era of Star Trek, with the Doctor's appearances in Prodigy and now in Starfleet Academy, but at the same time very much a supporting character, certainly in Prodigy very much a supporting character, and sort of in that, like, a little bit of sort of the exposition role, like giving information to the main characters who will then go and do something with that, the sort of the mentor role in Prodigy, now the not mentor, just teacher role in Starfleet Academy. Academy. So it would be really interesting to kind of spend a little time with the Doctor, not as passed through his relationships with others, but the Doctor as the Doctor and who that character is now.
And I will be there. I can't wait to see what comes, what his big episode is going to be this season. But yeah, we're truly blessed, and it's such a rich bench that they can call upon. And I wouldn't be surprised. I saw something the other day where someone was like, I think someone had noticed that there was like a Janeway quote that was on like the wall at the Academy, and someone was like, I wonder, like, it was like hidden Janeway cameo. But you sat there thinking, you could actually do a Janeway episode. Like, you could have a flashback to the adventures at some point in the past 800 years together. Like, I think something like that could maybe happen. So that's on my maybe curious to see if that happens list anyway.
Well, whilst Paramount Skydance have largely contracted the Star Trek franchise to their Paramount Plus streaming service, a move that was sharpened by their decision to let Netflix's international licensing deal lapse for the legacy Star Trek shows at the end of 2025, that has left Star Trek fans in countries without Paramount Plus feeling left out of the opportunity to share in the excitement around Starfleet Academy. Well, for fans in European countries without Paramount Plus, the wait is almost over. Star Trek Starfleet Academy will launch on the SkyShowtime service on Thursday, February 5th. It will, as on Paramount Plus, lead off with the show's first 2 episodes, followed by weekly releases of the remainder of the first season. The SkyShowtime announcement will bring Starfleet Academy to Albania, Andorra, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Bulgaria, Croatia, Czechia, Denmark, Finland, Hungary, Kosovo, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Norway, the Netherlands, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Serbia, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, and Sweden. Lee, as an almost European, how are you feeling about the current state of Star Trek's international licensing?
Yeah, tricky. It's one of those things. I own all of the DVDs and Blu-rays. I am a completionist, so I will never have to...
Even Section 31?
Even Section 31. That is the pain of being a completionist, Alex. But it's one of those ones. I found myself watching a lot of Star Trek on Netflix, just knowing that it was kind of about to end. I was watching a lot of Next Generation, but I've been one of those ones that over the kind of past few years with like my Apple account, I've got an account set to America where I've been buying up the digital box sets every few months when they go on sale. So quite convenient timing last week when I think Star Trek finished on the 8th of January in the UK, and then to mark Starfleet Academy, Apple had a big sale, so I picked up. I was missing the Next Generation, got that, Deep Space Nine, the original series, got that. The only series I'm waiting for some deals on just now are Discovery, and I haven't got Section 31 on digital. It was about $10. I was like, $5 would be more my thing. Just
99 cents.
Exactly, just to never watch it again, but have it on hand. So it's one of those ones I don't want to be overly reliant on streaming services as such. And I found this odd. Like I think back to, it certainly wasn't an issue for American listeners, but when I think was it season 3 or 4 of Star Trek Discovery, where it was originally on Netflix in the UK, and then there was no like agreement in place for it to be anywhere at all. Yeah. I think it was like worked out on Pluto or something. Very weird. Someone should write a book on that one day. But I remembered at the time thinking, I am just going to, because I am a Star Trek fan, I am going to have to recreate the 2000s and go into like Napster and illegally download this. And I don't want to be having to do this. But I always think with something like this, if you live in so many of these countries that don't have Starfleet Academy and you are a fan, you're probably going to be doing illegal downloading or, trying to work out a VPN here somewhere. Like, it's one of these things, it can just be so counterproductive it can be great to deliver these things, but if you're so far behind, gone are the days where you could wait years in the UK and you would have to wait for a VHS to come up or to come on to BBC Two, like, in 1991 when Star Trek had been out for about 3-4 years, or have someone send over a VHS copy to show a Star Trek fan club. Those days are gone now. And, if people don't get those kind of options, they're going to be taken away. And I feel like, they kind of have to get their ducks in a row with these things, or else they're just going to miss out on the viewer data. They're just going to literally go elsewhere.
Oh man, talking about illegally downloading Star Trek brought back this memory for me of, I had found, this would have been 2001, because it was the end of Voyager. I had found this website where you could, this was before the This was even before like Napster, LimeWire, all of that stuff. Like I had found this website where they had the last few episodes of Voyager, which had not yet come out in the UK. And it was almost like, you know, it was a little web player. So you would click play and the episode would start playing. And my home internet was not fast enough to allow me to watch this in any meaningful way. So we had Saturday school at the school I went to, which was a deeply traumatic experience. But I remember one time after Saturday school, because you did sports in the afternoon and it sort of finished at indeterminate times. I snuck up to the computer lab at the school because they had better internet, and I went on this website and I started to watch Endgame. I wanted to see the last episode of Star Trek Voyager. But even then, I mean, this is 2001 internet. Even the school internet was not particularly fast. And so it was basically downloading like very, very slowly, but not in a way where it was like you can't watch it until it's all downloaded. You could play what had downloaded up to that point. So I would start playing the episode and it would play the first 10 seconds and then it would go back to the beginning again, and then it would play the first 15 seconds and then it would go back to the beginning again and play the first 30 seconds. So I'd probably seen the first, and I don't think I made it any further than like 5 or 10 minutes into the episode because it was all just taking too long, you know, and it was too crazy. But I think I've probably seen those opening scenes of Endgame 10 times more than I have seen the rest of the episode because of that one afternoon of me desperately sitting there praying for it to download faster so I could get deeper and deeper into the episode each time.
That's amazing. You know, I romanticize those times, but they were such a stress and pain. I remember doing very similar. I remember downloading, you know, it was torrents at the time, like first year at university. I was sitting in like the internet lab just trying to download like the last few episodes, just like, and it was just so slow and throttled. I'm just sitting there like sat for hours just waiting for it to download to enjoy. And I can even remember the first thing, like I remembered, you know, period before then you would download, as you say, and kind of stream. But like I remember the period, like the first ever torrent I got was Stargate SG-1 season 9, because I was like, I just can't wait, I need to see this. And it's like it was such a crazy period of time, but like you felt really grateful for being able to watch this stuff early, and you sat there thinking, God, my friends must be like, if I had some real Star Trek fan friends right now with me, we would be having the coolest time and we would know how exciting it is to be watching this stuff earlier in this capacity. It's just something, you know, I kind of thought, you know, the streaming era would kind of bring an end to that, but hey, it all just continues on in different ways. Yeah,
exactly. You know, it is funny. You and I particularly have a nostalgic soft spot for the Star Trek VHS tapes as being effectively our way into Star Trek in the UK in the 1990s, but things are better now, right? Even with all of this, you know, stuff going on and availability of, is it on 2 streaming services? Is it on 1 streaming service? Is it only available for purchase digitally? Is it on Blu-ray? It's still better today than getting 2 episodes on a tape 6 months after they come out. Hopefully, if you got there quick enough and someone else didn't swipe the 1 tape that they had for sale that week. Yeah, but at the same time, we're like, oh, those were the days.
Yeah, $7.99 for Paramount Plus compared to $12.99 for 1 VHS video. Feels like a hell of a deal. Like, I'm never going to complain about the cost. Go on, charge triple. I still would be like, hey, that was a hell of a deal compared to the 90s. Yeah, bash on Paramount or whatever. Don't do it. But I'm still mentally scarred by that period and how much pocket money I'd be losing at a time. Just now it's like, well, you know, I'm not grabbing fish and chips instead this week.
Or that first release of the DVDs where it was £100 a season.
Yeah. And now you can pick them up in charity shops for a couple of quid.
Right.
Yeah, we've been through it.
Well, and lastly this week, IDW Comics have announced their first tie-in series to Star Trek Starfleet Academy. Scheduled to debut in April 2026, Star Trek Starfleet Academy Lost Contact is written by Lane Morgan and illustrated by Coralie Espuna and Nora Serrano. The synopsis reads, quote, Caleb, Genesis, Jaden, Kyle, and Terima are all students of Starfleet Academy, the illustrious school responsible for the Federation's best. One day, they dream to serve as great leaders on board ships of their own, to study the cultural intricacies of sentient life amongst the galaxy, or to go where no person has explored before. But today, their mission is simply to execute a survey simulation on a lifeless, low-oxygen planet. Or at least it seems simple, until a huge storm cuts off their contact with their teachers aboard the Athena, and something impossible appears, an alien. Now they'll have to work together and use everything they've learned in class about first contact to make it off the planet alive. Do you think you'll pick up this one once it releases?
Well, interesting. Funnily enough, I got a delivery from eBay today of Star Trek Generations and First Contact comic books. I got that for a couple of quid, and I was like, do you know what? I'm going to really enjoy, reading these. So I think based on that, I think maybe in like 30 years' time, I'll probably pick up these. It's one of those ones, like, for me, it just makes me laugh, and God, this is turning into I remember the 90s, but like, I rarely ever read those books, but I remember those kind of the classic 90s era Star Trek books you could just get. There was hundreds of them on the shelf, and like that Starfleet Academy series where it's like the young next generation, where you'd have like a baby face Worf, but then you'd basically have like an adult face like Geordi kind of slapped on a kid's body on the cover. Like there was like 20 to 30 of those. I remember there was Voyager ones as well, which was basically just a young Kate Mulgrew on the cover. I have a fond memory of those covers. I can't remember if there was Playmate action figures of them. I don't think so, but I just remember going into those things and just thinking, I've been prepared for this series for, I'm nearly 40 odd years of like slowly tricked in that I should watch the Starfleet Academy show. But yeah, it just continues on the legacy of Star Trek to do a Starfleet Academy. Like, I don't even know how many comic books there was back in the day that was like Starfleet Academy, Deep Space Nine, Starfleet Academy, TNG, Voyager. Like, it's always been a thing. So yeah, when I saw that news, it wasn't so much thinking, I need to go get this recent ones. I was like, I'm going to go click on Memory Alpha and look at those old covers and have a bit of kind of memory where it's like Cadet Worf goes off on an adventure, but will he make it back alive? Like, they were just really cool retro covers, and yeah, good memories.
All right, since we're doing 90s Star Trek nostalgia, my first Star Trek comic experience was at the Lakeside Shopping Centre near Thurrock in Kent, which was the sort of closest, in American parlance, mall to where I grew up. And I was there with my parents, and we were walking through part of the mall, and we passed this one it wasn't even a proper shop, it was like a stall, and there was one of those spinner racks with comics on it, and I spotted 2 Star Trek comics, a thing that, like, I don't think I really had a conception of that being a thing at this point in time. This is probably 96, 97, so I would have been 9, 10 years old, so I don't think I conceived of the existence of Star Trek comics at that time. And so I was like, oh my God, it's Star Trek. So whenever I had a look, convinced my parents to buy me these 2 comics, and it was the Marvel Comics run of Deep Space Nine. It was issue number 1, and I still have it on the shelf behind me, the exact same comic I bought that day. And it really stuck with me because in this comic issue, it ends with Deep Space Nine getting sucked into the wormhole, which was just this very, like, I'm actually surprised the show never did it. Like the station itself having an emergency situation and ending up going through the wormhole. And then, what are the consequences of that, and how do you get it back to where it's supposed to be? And that was just one of those moments where it's like, oh my God, on the page, you can do something like this that you could never do in the show, and I'm sure that's probably the reason why they never did it, because the expense of doing the effects of like the wormhole and the station and having the station go through the wormhole, like, that's really expensive. So if it's something they thought of, maybe not something they pursued for that reason. And then the other one was, there was a line of Deep Space Nine comics, there was a line of Voyager comics, and then there was this like bumper-sized issue line they were doing. And the first issue of it was Picard wakes up as Kirk on the TOS Enterprise, and Kirk wakes up as Picard on the Enterprise E, and it's like how did they get there? You know, like, what's going on? And I think it ends up being Q that's responsible. And unlike the Deep Space Nine one, which was the first issue in like an arc, so the story didn't resolve by the end of it. This was like a bumper issue, so you got the full story. And yeah, I think it was Q who switched them or whatever. But again, one of those things where it's like, oh, even at that point in time, I was sort of conscious, like, I'm never going to see this on television. And so there is that sort of piece around like these comics being this really awesome place where you can dive deeper and see things that you're just not going to see on screen.
No, and that's always been, you know, it's true of the 90s when I had like a couple of quid a month, you know, pocket money. And now it's like, oh, I see some of these covers and stories. And even recently when you were chatting with Ross, I was like, oh, I love the sound of this experience with the kind of the red shirts and
red shirts, yeah.
It just sounds awesome. And I'm like, oh, I just don't want to have to remember to like pick up another copy, or I end up spending like $20 to complete a set of things. Like that's always been my stop with the comics. It's just never kind of clicked for me. But I think if I had some sort of like Netflix version where I could just go through them all and watch them on my iPad, I probably would be more than quite content. But yeah, I just feel like, yeah, same as I was a kid, as an adult, it's just sadly never happening.
All right, well, we've talked about the facts, and now let's offer our opinions on the Star Trek franchise.
Your opinion has been noted. Anything further?
So as we transition from the news section to the opinion section, each week my guests and I will give you a Star Trek opinion, wish, or theory we're nurturing that week about any aspect of the Star Trek franchise we want to opine on. So Lee, let's hear it. What's your big Star Trek opinion for this week?
Yeah, I was rewatching the third episode of Starfleet Academy, and I loved the episode. You know, I really love the idea of the episode. I think it's a good episode. And the idea that like they are embracing that it is Starfleet Academy with all the kind of, you know, hijinks and stuff, that they're not kind of embarrassed that it's like a kind of, you know, youngsters having fun at Academy. Sure. Like I recently rewatched First Duty. Not First Duty. I did watch First Duty, but I rewatched the game, and they're talking about all the kind of hijinks that were happening at the Academy with like, you know, Wesley. And you're like, yeah, like whenever you got to visit in the TV show, it was always kind of like very straight faced, you know, even the movies to, you know, a small effect. It was like a little bit of fun, but you know, it's kind of serious, very dorky. You know, I would have a great time there. But like I was watching and I'm thinking, you know, I can imagine if they were wanting to make this cool or like really tie into some sort of zeitgeist, that they'd be trying to do some sort of like version of Top Gun or something like that, where it's kind of a bit more masculine and bro-like and so on. And one of the things that I know people have their concerns with Starfleet Academy and, you know, or the future of Star Trek is they are always chasing money, these new owners, you know, rightly or wrongly. I think we have to trust but verify with this new era and how they treat Star Trek. I can see there being a third season of Starfleet Academy, but then I can potentially see it shifting into maybe like TV movie mode, and maybe it becomes that, you know, Top Gun style thing where it's like they're off into space, but you've got different adventures. It's like being kind of pilots, you know, this war kind of college. I could see there being like 90-minute versions potentially. You know, people talk about it, and I've hoped for it with like, well, maybe they'll do TV movies with Lower Decks or Strange New Worlds and things that are, you know, start this quote unquote Star Trek legacy. It's never really happened, but I think there could be the timing and potential jump off point to maybe do that with Starfleet Academy. I would love it to go 5 seasons, you know, or longer and so on, but I think there's that opportunity with the age range to maybe kind of navigate into TV movies, and maybe that sort of kind of Top Gun Maverick style model potentially. But I'm very curious. I just don't know where things are going to go with Star Trek at the moment, which is exciting, a little bit kind of nerve-wracking, but I think there's potential interesting opportunities with Starfleet Academy, and I'm curious to see where that goes.
Yeah, I mean, you know, to sort of pull the conversation full circle, Section 31 was an attempt to do TV movies, and it didn't go super well, but like, that's because Section 31 wasn't a great TV movie, not because Star Trek can't be successful at doing TV movies. And yeah, I mean, I think the sort of Starfleet Academy world does lend itself pretty well to TV movies. I mean, honestly, that first episode at 1 hour and 15 minutes kind of almost is a TV movie, right? Like, it's certainly very close to being a traditional length Star Trek pilot, and does it very well. And because you have this sort of combination of ground-based storytelling and space-based space storytelling, it really does open up lots of possibilities for the kind of stories you could tell, the format you can do it, but also still have that sort of clear through line of a set of characters that you really care about, versus, I think, maybe what sort of hurt Section 31 a little bit was you had Georgiou, who was the sort of carryover character, but with the exception of a slightly different take on Rachel Garrett, everybody else was a new character. And it's like, I don't know you, and like, this isn't really enough time for me to come to particularly care about you as a character and what you want and feel in a way that I'm going to really resonate with, versus if you're doing a TV movie. Like, that's why I think you're right directionally, in the sense of take the shows and then sort of in the same way that TOS went to theatrical movies and TNG went to theatrical movies, take the shows and the characters that people really resonate with in the shows and then move them into TV movies, because you're sort of getting the best of both worlds. You're getting to continue the chance to tell the stories with the characters, but also it's a set of characters that you care about.
Yeah, count me in. And yeah, I think we are about to hit a wall in terms of what Star Trek is in production, what is, happening up there in kind of Toronto or, in Paramount lots. And I think, we've still got a good few months to go until Comic-Con in San Diego, which I think will be very telling about the future. But I think we have to just prepare for the odd maybe leak about the future, but I think it's going to be pretty quiet for the next few months. It feels like the top brass at Paramount are highly distracted with Warner Brothers at the moment, and I think maybe a lot of what we were hoping once people were in the door at Paramount, that there'd be an idea of the future of the franchise. I feel like, it's put things into limbo again. A good few more months, but let's see what July brings.
Absolutely. All right, let me give you my opinion for this week, and it's just a comment on how, there is a lot of excitement about Starfleet Academy, and a lot of people are sort of coming to it and saying, I'm having a great time, whether I expected to have a great time with it or not. But there's also a lot of weird stuff out there. And for me, number one on the completely crazy reaction to Starfleet Academy is the reaction that some, do I even call them Star Trek fans, are having to the way that Holly Hunter sits in the captain's chair in Star Trek Starfleet Academy. And before anybody out there is like, Alex, that can't be the case. Surely you are manufacturing the controversy about this, or you saw one person say something silly and you're sort of blowing that up to, this is how, a subset of people who watch Star Trek feel. I went into the comments. Yes, I put on my radioactive suit and I went into the Facebook comments for a picture that the official Star Trek Facebook page posted of Holly Hunter in the captain's chair. And I pulled out a few choice examples of comments to share with the listener audience to show that this is really something. Quote, say you don't Trek seriously. Since day one, that chair has been the symbol of Starfleet, and it is to be respected. Here's another one. Is she a captain in a military organization or a TikTok influencer for MILFs? Another one. Is that person 400 years old or 4 years old? I remember clearly getting scolded by my parents for sitting like that. Another one. Somehow made it to captain while ignoring basic Starfleet protocols. As if there's a Starfleet protocol for how to sit in a chair. Another one, what next? Are they going to turn it into a toilet? I miss this serious tone the older series had. The one that inspired was a proper framework for space exploration in terms of attitude and discipline among the characters. It doesn't need to be sissified down and made into a joke to convey social messages. Just my opinion, though. Some people will take this way too personal and insult. I'm not fully sure what the last bit meant, but anyway, another one. Cool, I had not taken time to watch this yet. Now I know not to bother. A half step away from Star Wars Acolyte. Another one. Someone needs to slap the shit out of whoever approved this. Another one. Much like when Luke tossed away the lightsaber in The Last Jedi. Big mistake to disrespect something as iconic as the captain's chair. And another one. She doesn't have the presence, the bearing, or the class to be a Starfleet officer. She's a joke and a disgrace to the uniform and to captains that have gone before. And then the last one I'll share, totally unprofessional and very cringeworthy. So here's my opinion about all of this. if you have a negative reaction to the way that Holly Hunter's Captain Nahla Ake sits in the captain's chair, you are a socially maladjusted dork who has no concept of what it's like to live in the real world. In the real world, nobody gives a hoot how you sit in a chair. Doesn't matter. How you sit in a chair does nothing to convey leadership or respect or any of that stuff. It's just how you sit in a chair. How you lead is how you lead. How you, in this case, teach is how you teach. And it matters who you are. And if you watch the show, Holly Hunter's Nahla Ake is a great leader, a great teacher, clearly commands the respect of those around her. And that's not like a manufactured thing by a group of writers. That's a combination of the character, that's a combination of the performance that Holly Hunter is giving as that character, and like it all fits together. There are ways that you can criticize some of the characterizations in Starfleet Academy, some of the sort of early relationships that have developed, but Nahla Ake as being a really competent leader and a really excellent teacher are two things that are pretty indisputable. And so if your big takeaway from Ake sort of sitting oddly in a captain's chair, which is a cultural thing, by the way, I mean, she is Lanthanite, and Lanthanites are weirdos generally. And so it is, you know, if you sort of have to have a headcanon for why is the character sitting like that, you can go with it's a cultural tick. But all of that aside, none of it matters. The only thing that matters is what the character does. And I would die for Holly Hunter's performance as Captain Nahla Ake. So in some ways, while there's this big sort of reaction to Starfleet Academy that's very fun and very measured, the reaction to it that's negative is somehow even more unhinged than you would think it would be, as demonstrated by just a few choice comments that I picked out of the 900 plus comments that there were on this one picture of Nahla Ake sitting in a captain's chair. I don't know, Lee, how does Holly Hunter's posture strike you on Starfleet Academy?
I love it, Alex. I absolutely love it. When I watched those kind of first 6, I was like, I can't wait for the inevitable YouTube compilation of how she sits. I just thought it was great. And I will say, this is, you know, for this random weirdos online, you are going up against an actress that has won an Academy Award for Best Actress, has been nominated 3 more times for the Academy Award. She's won Emmys. She is someone that knows what she is doing. She is one of the greatest actors of her generation. And I remembered going from Starfleet Academy, whatever, to Holly Hunter's in Starfleet Academy. Like, this is just mind-blowingly exciting. She is an incredible actress, great physical performer. Like, I love her intuitions to playing this character. Like, I watch that and I go, like, I would die for this woman. She's just a fantastic character, one that I just adore spending time with in Starfleet Academy. And I'm gutted that we're gone from the era of 26 episodes, because it's like, I just want more of her doing whatever she wants to do. I think she is so great, and she commands authority in a way that I really love and admire. And you think of kind of people, she's a captain, but she's a dean or whatever, chancellor. But like, you think of people talk about, if I was in the military or the army, I want a Cisco, a Janeway, whoever. It's like, but if you're a young person that's navigating, Starfleet Academy, the traumatic period that the galaxy's come out of in the post-burn, I would just love her presence, her quiet authority, the way she has insights. And, I'm sure there's going to be plenty more exciting episodes where we see how she guides things. And I just think Holly Hunter, I just can't believe we have her in Star Trek. Whatever they're paying her, I'm happy my Paramount Plus money is going towards her salary. Like, she can sit however she wants to sit. And I must admit, being surprised, because I did look at those comments when I was like, people are going to love the way she's, right. We have, I suppose they've moved on from being, kicking Molly Sue comments to death and some of the other, tedious comments they've had about Star Trek over the years. There's always going to be something to complain about, but how someone sits is a new low. These people are up there with the people that have taken issue with the Doctor singing. Irrelevant to me. Move on. don't care.
100%. Do you have an opinion, theory, or wish about Star Trek that you'd like to share? Email them to me at weeklytrek@trekcore.com, and I might feature your thoughts in a future episode. Well, that's all the time we've got for this episode of Weekly Trek. Thank you so much to my guest, Lee Hutchison, for joining me today. Lee, how can people contact you if they want to continue the conversation?
Yeah, you can find me online at Lee Hutchison or at Star Trek VHS, but yeah, I'm out there, and yeah, will not be liking comments that people leave about how terribly someone apparently sits. So yeah, leave me alone.
And you can find this show on X at Weekly Trek, and me at Alexander T. Perry on X, and at Alex T. Perry on Blue Sky and everywhere else. And if you enjoy the show, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast player of choice. And for all your Star Trek news needs, in addition to our extensive media archives of all things Star Trek, I hope you will keep your senses locked to TrekCore.com. Well, thank you, Lee. Thank you to all of my listeners. And until next week, live long and prosper. Weekly Trek is a production of TrekCore.com and owned by Trapezoid Media, LLC.